This is Professor Reggie Myles welcoming you to another outstanding program where we're going to get into the history tonight, or should I say today, on the legendary Records Row out of Chicago, Illinois. So glad that we can share this time together on blogtalk.com, Gumbo for the Soul, and we want to thank everyone responsible for allowing us to get involved with this program. My guest this evening will be the one and only Records Row guru, Gus Redmond, and, of course, and I'm not supposed to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, the Records Row Kid, Mr. Paris Holley. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good evening, Reggie. Doing well.
Good. I am so glad. I'm so glad we've got this opportunity to chat, to talk about some real history about the music industry and about how everything got started on that legendary street, Michigan Avenue in Chicago. Gus, I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Could you set us up on this journey of what Records Row is all about?
Well, Records Row is where it used to be called Automobile Row. From 12th in Michigan to 39th in Michigan was called Automobile Row. And that was before Record Row, because these buildings that Record Row was part of was all 2-3-story buildings where they were like warehouses. And this is where Capone's hotel was on 22nd Cermak in Michigan, and all down the street going each way from 22nd to 12th Street and back 39th was Record Row. So this is where everything was happening at when it was Bats Restaurant off of Michigan and BATES, that's Bats, right? So these are the things that were part of Record Row, with Chess Records and Brunswick Records and VJ Records was the first black label that came off of this block, which was called Michigan Avenue, but they known for Motor Row. Now it was Record Row. So this is what it was about. This is where it all started. When we say where it started, everybody was out of Chicago here, from Quincy Jones to you name it. Off that street, Motown Records was born with Berry Gordy and other labels that was around the country. It all had to start here in Chicago because Al Benson was the number one DJ in the world that was out of Chicago here. That what was the call letters of the station he was on, Reggie?
Al played at WGES.
Right, and that station is where all of this came together from me and Paris. Is Carl Davis came off of Michigan Avenue. That's how I got a chance to come on Michigan Avenue. But I even started a little bit before Carl. But, you know, we just want to first let you know what Record Row was, and I would like for Paris to explain his side of Record Row.
Oh, hey, Reggie.
Hey, Paris.
Record Row was for me, it was a very magical place, okay? For the first time, I got to see how records were actually made, pressed. I got to interact with all the artists, and it was very magical. And right then and there, I knew that it was going to become much bigger than what I was seeing, and it actually did. And
Gus, let me ask. Go ahead.
And to work with these people, I learned a lot. I learned the music industry, and I'm grateful for that.
Guys, I want to ask you. You know, we're talking about this legendary place and great people. Just give me briefly some people that you had a chance to rub elbows with. I know, Gus, you mentioned Berry Gordy. Well, what was some of the artists that you were with? Jackie Wilson involved, right. Some of the legendary producers. Give me a rundown, or who's who of who was walking on Records Row.
Well, Record Row, what Carl Davis, where I came off of Record Row is Automobile Club, was on 2400 South Michigan Avenue, where I first came to Michigan Avenue to learn about what was about the recording business. So meeting Otis and Major there through my sister Peaches, who at the time was working for Playboy. She was working out of the office of Hugh Hefner, and it automatically put me in contact with some stars and people that I was meeting through her. So that's how I met Major and Otis Lavelle. We began to be friends, and I was in the group we had, the first singer group, and had experience and got out the group and went on and became the promotion person and road manager for Major on the road with Fabian and Dick Clark. And because like our first record, Monkey Time was a super record. So these are the kind of stuff that I started with Otis and Major. And then, of course, other groups like that came out of that was the Vibrations and Walter Jackson and, of course, Mary Wells. And Curtis Mayfield was Carl's partner. They were writing and producing, and they had came up with the sound that we call and still call it in our hearts today called soul music, which Europe adopted that, and they still call it soul music today, where we kind of abandoned it a little bit because you had great artists that were soul singers like Sam Cooke and guys that all came out of Chicago, Sam Cooke, Delecta Clark. You had the Dales, you had the Curtis Mayfield and Jerry Butler and the Impressions, and, just to name it, the Four Seasons was on VJ Records. The Beatles came to VJ Records. It was just on and on. All the music companies was up and down that street from Ernie Lena's distributing where Paris worked there. That's some things Paris can tell you from that, because sort of me and Paris' backgrounds of young men, we had the experience of meeting the people that made it happen and still today know the people who make it happen today.
Okay, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And so I want to just jump over to you, Paris, right now, and then Gus, I want you to come back in behind Paris. But Paris, tell me, when did you start on Records Row, and how did you get there? Tell us that journey of how did you get there, and how did you become a part of this legendary place?
It all started with Doc Pellegrino, who was the owner of the Kingston Mines. He gave me my first job. When Doc opened up a place called Doc Gandalf's, he had bands coming in, and these were people who were unknown back then, who are known now. And I started becoming very interested in the music. So after I ventured out, I went home. My father had about 12 cases of records in these little cases that had red, green, and orange tops. So I started opening the cases and looking at the records, Chess Records, VJ Records, and in fine print on the label, it said Chicago, Illinois. So I was determined to find out where those records were coming from and who was involved. I walked through Chess Records when I was 12 years old. I walked right through the door. And as soon as I walked through the door, I said, does anybody need anything from the store? And right away, Phil said, come to think of it, I do. That's where it all started, is when he said, come to think of it, I do. So I started hanging around on Record Row. As soon as I got out of school, I got on the Lake Street L and made my way downtown to Michigan Avenue. And every day, this was every day, except for Sunday, of course. And I started running from, I think it was 12th Street to 22nd Street, back and forth, up and down Michigan Avenue, and going to the store for people. And I kept a pocket full of money doing that. And when somebody would want something, they said, where's the kid? And Phil and Leonard did that to me. They gave me that name, The Kid. Where's the kid? And I remember when Howlin' Wolf walked in, and he looked over, he says, who is that? He said, oh, that's the kid. If you need something from the store, that's the person. So we started talking, and he said, oh, well, come on with me. I got something for you to do. So he said, see those guitars? Tune them up for me. Now, I didn't know the first thing about tuning the guitar. So to make a long story short, we became friends. So I started meeting all of these people, you know, and I didn't see fame at the time. They were just musicians. Muddy Waters, Bo Diddley, and all these people started coming in. So I said, I'm kind of enjoying this, so I'm going to stick around. And I was there ever since.
Wow, that's fascinating to have a conversation with the great howling wolf. That's really something. I'm just imagining myself and what it would be like for me if I were in the presence of such great and legendary artists. So you started out as being a runner.
Yeah, but you see, Reggie, I didn't see them as stars.
Yeah.
They were just musicians. But then later on in life, I realized that these people ended up being very famous.
Mm-hmm.
So Howlin' Wolf took me under his wing. I started following him around. He would take me to a place on, I think it was Sacramento and Lake Street, a place called The Hideaway. He had this song called Smokestack Lightning.
Love that.
I got an addiction to that song. Okay. So he would put me underneath the front table. Now the tables at the Hideaway had these long tablecloths so you couldn't see underneath. He would hide me underneath just so I could hear him do Smokestack Lightning.
Wow.
And,
wow.
You know, like I said, it was a magical time, and I wish I could go back.
I got to ask a question. Did you get a chance to talk and get close to Hubert or Hewlett, his guitarist, Sumlin?
We met in passing, okay? But, no, it was only certain people that I would open up to or talk to because I didn't want to cause any problems and say, well, kid, you got to go. So I kind of sat in the chair, you know, read a comic book or something like that until somebody wanted something.
Now that
was a good job. Yeah, that was a good job.
Gus, what were your early beginnings on Record Row?
My early beginnings is growing up and having my family had a barbershop across the street from Club de Lisa called Redmond's Barbershop and Cleaners, and I lived across the street from the Drum and Bugle Corps at 57th and State Street. I always had that music in me, and I always knew I was going to be in the music because I had a major conflict with family that they didn't want me. They wanted me to be a barber. They wanted me to press clothes and do all of that. But every time I looked across the street at Club de Lisa and I seen all them guys coming out there real sharp, the first thing I did was had to be sharp myself. So I went in the cleaners where my uncle had the cleaners and got all of the clothes people didn't come and get and tailored them to my size. And then I went and made hats and to go with the suits. And you know, I was the first real dresser, I would say, from George Williams and a couple more guys that was around me and Melvin Moore, all these older guys. When I was 15 years old, 16 or 17, when I took my first record to the radio station was the Bobby Rush record, Chicken Head. And I took that record to the station in behalf of Calvin Carter. That was a song him and Willie Henderson had produced. And I took also Seal Johnson in behalf of Howard Bedno, who was the top promotion guys in the city. So they tested me with them two records. I had just won the Killer Joe contest with McKee Fitzhugh. So I was popular, you know, in dressing like real dap, you know what I'm saying, specs, the whole 9 yards, Reggie. I mean, I was clean. And I won the contest with Killer Joe. So McKee Fitz knew me from that. And the first two records I took to the station in behalf of that was the Bobby Rush and the Seal Johnson. Now, at that time, these records, Bobby and Seal's record, over 1,000 people have redone Seal's record, Sock It To Me. On that song, that's Minnie Riperton is on that song. She does that little, and everybody used that song in America. B.T., Michael Jackson, I mean, everybody. So Sylvia's known for one of the old soul singers that have the most songs out of Chicago. Him and Curtis Mayfield and Gene Recker, Laurel, and just to name some that have songs that's been redid on songs that are the biggest songs out here in the country today, you know. So, yeah, that was my first 2 million sellers was Bobby Rush and Sylvia. Then I met Carl and became working for Gene Chalmers' road manager. So for about 5 years I was with Gene and did a lot of things. We learned, went all over the country and shared a lot of things. It started with Major Lance first. Then Carl asked me to go on the road with Gene. And then, of course, from there is when we started really hitting, and every record we was putting out was going gold. And I was seeing how the team was working. You know, from Record Row, I learned that it took a team of people. Like we had to first get the sound, so we captivated the sound with a company called J. Lynn. And J. Lynn was what Nat Turner liked in behalf of Brunswick, because it was the sound that Bernard Reed and Danny Reed and Quentin Joseph on drums and Gerald Sims, they were great. They came, and then from Jalen Sound is when we went down on Michigan Avenue, and we happened to get the building that was 1449 South Michigan, that was the VJ building. So we automatically turned VJ into Brunswick. And then that's when the hits started rolling out of there. The Jackie Wilson, the first million seller came out of there was the Sly, Slick and the Wicked, which I was part right of that and was managing the group, the Lost Generation, because they were from the same housing projects that I was. Now, don't forget, you heard me just say housing projects. There wasn't no housing projects back then. It was called Stateway Garden, and they was like living in high rises, you know. We made these places from the 60s and going into the 80s, where then they'd be calling them projects. But back in the day, like living in one of them was like living in a high rise, right, Reggie?
I hear you guys.
You know what I'm saying?
I was down. Yes, I know exactly what you're saying. I was down a little bit further on South State Street.
Yeah. Well, you were down there, Robert Taylor's and all them there, so down that way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, but all of them wasn't no projects. We didn't call them no projects. They was gardens when they first started out, you know. Because Chicago had it going on. You got to realize that the music came out of here, but we had the biggest clubs. We had everything going. You got to realize this was during the time of, even way before us, was Capone them. So they made that street what it was at first with just the automobile. Then, of course, when the record road came in, then that was just another part, because the Chicago Defender, where the Automobile Club was, that was the Chicago Defender building, which was our black newspaper that everybody knew across the country, because Earl Calloway and people like that would write about us, you know, full-page articles we would have back in the day. Where today, you know, the paper's not there in the community like they used to be, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Paris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Paris.
Yes.
Okay, and you know, your experience growing on this place where you didn't feel like these guys were stars or anything like that, and all the stuff that these artists, these musicians were sharing with you. How did that shape what you're doing today? How did that move you into becoming an engineer? And who were the people that were responsible for putting you both in front of and in behind the music, as far as creating music is concerned?
Oh, well, it was a number of people. I don't know if you're familiar with Bruce Swedien, who was Michael Jackson's recording engineer. But the person oh, you okay? Okay. The person who really got me really interested in being a recording engineer was Stu Walder at Sound Market on North Michigan Avenue. And he saw that when I went up there, I was recording with a group called Easy Living. And when I went up there and I saw that recording console, I was mesmerized. He said, I see that you're interested. He said, I tell you what, you come down here every day in the afternoon, and let me show you some things. So he started showing me, okay? And all the way up until Sound Market closed, okay? So then I moved on. I went to CRC. I went to Paul Serrano's. I went to Universal. Danny Leake is another engineer, top notch, and I mean top notch engineer, who I learned a lot from, and even today I still learn from it. Okay, so yeah, there was many engineers. Paul Serrano, who had PS Recording Studio, you know, and that's where I met Denise Williams and Ramsey Lewis and everybody. And I said, yeah, this is what I want to do, you know. And from that point on, it was nonstop. It was nonstop. But there's so many facets of what has happened in that time period. I went from Record Row to go to work at every music store in the city of Chicago and then back to Record Row. So I was doing 6 or 7 different things at one time, and I was wondering how I was pulling this off. So, and it became a very bad habit. I started multitasking, and I still do it today. And I'm going to admit I am a workaholic. I cannot stay out of the studio. It's like I get anxiety attacks when I can't get into the studio. When I have an idea, I need to put it down. So this is what Record Row did to me. But it's a wonderful thing as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing that you and I do have in common, for years I had a chance to, as one would say, sit at the feet of Mr. Leake too, as he trained me at my church. I was an audio engineer at my church, and he was there as a consultant, and just learning from him was an awesome experience, and I still have that relationship with him where I can call on him today. So I know that's a great thing. Go ahead.
Reggie, now this is going to kind of shock you. I met Big Bill Hill when he was broadcasting out of a little small booth on Roosevelt. I think it was called Big D Grocery Store or something like that. He was on the side of the building broadcasting from a booth. I stood there for 4.5 hours and watched him. And I kept asking him, I said, sir, how is it that this record is all over the radio and you're in this little booth? He says, after the show, I'm going to explain it to you. From that point on, every time he did a broadcast, I was there. We became good friends, very good friends. And then when I found out how he broadcast through a telephone line, I was just totally blown away. So then I started learning how to do that. Okay, so it's a lot, and then also hanging out with Carl Davis. Carl Davis, as far as I'm concerned, Quincy Jones couldn't hold a candle to Carl. He really couldn't. Carl had a way of he could hear something. He could hear maybe 30 seconds of something and say that's a hit, and he knew it. And
hum you the melodies and everything to go with it, paint the picture for you.
Yeah.
You know, bringing in the engineers and the right, like a Bruce Sedin, or like a Tom Tom, like a Sonny Sanders, like a Gerald Sims. All these guys that Carl had, they were all winners. Every one. He would, you know, he knew exactly which one to use with each artist we had that was going to give him the flavor of where that song was going.
And then when I found out, I'm sorry, Gus, go ahead.
And he had a team of 7 of us, counting him. And we used to go in meetings and listen to the products and vote on it. And if them babies didn't come out between 9 and 10s, we didn't go with no 8s. And so we got a lot of product that Carl Davis and we have lots of products in the can. That's a big catalog, just like Motown has and Stax and all the companies around America. But there's a large catalog, and we still have the company going today. New, it's called Shot Sound Music Group, which is called David's son, and Carl's brother, and Fanny, and Guy Daniels, and whole different organization that's working in the behalf of the Carl Davis Foundation, as well as the Carl Davis radio station coming, and the movie and TV show. So all that's what we're doing now, in regards to what me and Paris is working with. Carl was the one who enlightened me, and like you said, Paris, and since that time, that's how me and Paris came together as well, from when Carl Davis and Otis Lavelle brought, Paris into the company. That was when we started Shot Sound Records, and we had just left the record road going downtown. And then Paris came right at the tip of Brunswick, and then we was moving to go to Shot Sound Records, which was on Chestnut.
Wow. Now, when I hear those labeled names, Brunswick and Shot Sound, I think of some of the groups that were, on the Shot Sound label that Carl had. One of my favorite groups was Windy City.
Yep. Magnum Force, Gene Shy, Otis Lavelle, Major Lance. I mean, the Charlites. We had a lot of artists on Shot Sound Records. Now, Dakar Records, which came out of the Brunswick family, was the label we had Tyrone Davis on. So, and when I first took that record on the road, kind of changed my mind. Now, I was always on the road all the time. I guess I would ask the question all the time, how come he didn't see me a lot? Because I would be gone.
Gus, before you get into that story, please tell me who arranged those. Did Carl Davis arrange those horns on "Can I Change My Mind"? Who did that? Who did
Willie
that?
Henderson.
Oh, okay.
Right. Willie Henderson. I came up with the hook on "Turn Back the Hands of Time." If I could turn back the hands of time. So I was in there when Willie was arranging it, and I happened to sing that hook line to him, and he wrote it right in there. But no, Willie Henderson did "Can I Change My Mind" and "Turn Back the Hands of Time."
Okay.
I was the executive producer, the president of the label, but Willie Henderson was the producer. Yeah.
All right. Now, you mentioned Dakar, and, I remember that. And from that label, I remember Hamilton Bohannon.
Yeah, one of the biggest artists we ever signed. Major and Otis Lavelle met him in Atlanta, Georgia, Underground Atlanta at the time, and Bohannon was playing there with his band. He was always part of Motown's band because he played for Marvin Gaye and they tour. It was always the Bohannon band. Bohannon was excellent musician, drummer. So we signed him to Brunswick. But then he was one of the first artists to get off the label, back, before everybody had kind of dissipated from the record label.
Wow.
But everything was good. I mean, we were young, just as good. I mean, we were all not in competition like you see record companies do today. We all really worked together. Some songs you heard with us in Chicago, we cut them over at Motown. They did the same. Once you were knowing who the people were, I mean, Bruce Dean, even though he was working with us, Brunswick, he was doing "I'll Make It All Right" by the Beautiful Zion Baptist Church. He did that because he did my first song, "The Sly, Slick, and the Wicked." I mean, without him as the engineer, we would have never came up with the Sly, the Slick, the Wicked, Wicked, Wicked. Ciao. He came up with that. All that stuff, that's what he came up with. He was a genius at that.
Wow. I guess that's why the King of Pop grabbed him, huh?
Absolutely. And it seemed like when he left Paris, it seemed like the music left too, didn't it, Paris?
Yeah, it did. It did.
Because that's what we always said, and I know me and Carl have talked, before, as friends and our staff, and we knew what our staff could do. That's the one thing about the staff, and staying in it so long, we knew what each staff member could do. Carl had 3 or 4 engineers, but his number one engineer was Bruce Dean. If he was going to do some he gonna use Bruce. But he had other guys he had too now that was good too. That was up under, like Danny Link and all the guys that came out of Universal. That's where we got Bruce from out of Universal.
Yes.
He came to work for us after I saw how bad he was, and then he built our Brunswick recording studio. Yeah.
Gus,
all this was in the 60s. This is all during the 60s. All this we talking about, all of this is it. Tyrone came in 1968 too. All of the everything we've been talking about was in the early 60s, between 63, 60, with OK Columbia. Don't forget, OK Records was the first label that was considered a black major label because it was owned by Columbia Records. And Carl Davis was the first A&R person that they hired at any record company that was over that department. And he made OK Records a name brand label because that was called a race label at that time, meaning most of the
artists were black.
Artists would be on OK, right?
Right. And
but out of that came Walter Jackson and Billy Butler and
Major Land.
Too. Major Lance,
wow.
So that was the early hit.
That run with Carl. Give us some more insight about Carl with the things that he did, not only in creating the music, but how did he get the music to radio? What was Carl's knack? Where did he fit in with that? You talked about his instinct on knowing hits. Give us some more insight with that. Tell us more about this man, Carl Davis.
Carl was known as ears, that he had magic ears. That's what he was known. Even all my guys I associate with today, they all call ears. Greta in New York, and my person Billy Hendricks in Philly, and Tanya, and my son, all my people, Paris, all of us, we have great ears and hear certain things. And Paris had to introduce to me the new set of earphones that I got that I'm just going crazy because I've been hearing the music, but he showed me how to hear different and hear from what radio and everything you have out here today can offer today. But we have ears. And from that, I learned everything I know from Carl because Carl was a promotion person like myself. At first, when Carl started, he was in promotion. He worked for a distributor, and then he got the job with Al Benson to be the music director, and that means now he's picking music, and then he learned to hear that music, and you got to realize every day he had to come up with the top 40 records. So in this computer they had at that time, what's the computer called? You all named it earlier.
Univac.
Yeah, Carl was the only one that was working that. Nobody in America worked that, and he had just came home from the Army where he learned how to work that, and Al Benson was looking for an operator, especially for that, because Al wanted to create how the top 40 records would be for the country. So they picked this, and they used it and put everything in the computer, like what the computers do today, and it spit it out. And it was like an ad machine. It add up, and then it let them know what song was number one. And that's what Al Benson would go on the air every day and say, here's the top 10, here's the top 20, the top 30, the top 40. And that's what he did every day on his show. His show was the biggest show Chicago ever seen. That it ended up giving 12 hours of broadcasting. So he took 3, and then he hired 4 other guys, Reggie, and they all became the biggest DJ Chicago ever seen. Now, this was in the 50s and the 60s. 70s came E-Rod and WVON with Leonard Chess and VON being the giant over the pop station here, WLS, Ratings they had, I broke Sugar Hill Records over there. Over 592 million sold records straight out of VON, over say 550 or better, straight from WVON.
Now
that came out of Chicago and the history of our music out here today. And the amazing thing, Reggie, is Beyonce and Jay-Z and all the biggest crossover, hip-hop groups. They've done our songs like Crazy in Love. A lot of people don't know that's a Charlotte song.
Yep, Are You My Woman?
Yeah, Are You My Woman, the girls, Fantasia, all them, Mama's Baby or whatever she got, that's the Charlotte song. Started back with, what's the guy, Paris, back in the day who did Have You Seen Her, from San Francisco.
Oh,
the first guy who did that song.
Right.
Who sampled it?
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Oh, man, the guy, he was top of the line in the hip-hop. Remember, he was the baddest dancer and with all the dancers and everything.
You talking about MC Hammer?
Yeah, MC Hammer did Charlotte song.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did Have You Seen Her. Yeah, he did do that.
Yeah, and that's the same song we cut right there on Michigan Avenue at Brunswick.
Right.
So even with the television show coming, Reggie, the show is about the history of what we're talking about, but from a cost standpoint, and as many artists that he has produced and could look into the artists like Major and different things I saw him do with Otis Lavelle and, just everything that I saw him do, he had an art form and how he would put things together. Barry had that. Barry Gordy had that. Al Bell had that. Kenny Galman Huff had that. Dick Griffey and Soul Train, when they started, they had all that. All the labels that had that eye, that look, the sound was very important to that song. That's why Jackie Wilson and these people that we were behind, man, a lot of people, a lot of good music, Soulful Strut, songs like that, that just, went pop. They wasn't just for black record. They crossed over as well,
Young Holt Unlimited. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a lot of good stuff still out of here today, out of Chicago today. On Michigan Avenue today, which is Record Road, you still got Chess. Chess Records has its building there on 21st in Michigan, and the 1449 building is getting ready to be another space, but the building is still there. And a lot of the buildings itself where these record companies, these distributors were, they're still there. They're just making them into other businesses as that street is not even the same, man. You got to realize that back in the day, you didn't have no shit. The tallest building, you remember, that was on Michigan was Capone's Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
You remember? So
yes,
all the other
yes.
were like two flat buildings, and, like I said, they be for the cars upstairs, downstairs, but they wasn't no high-rise buildings, you remember? Well, we got a picture, right, Paris, on the thing we had for the night, and it showed, if you look down Michigan Avenue going north, you didn't see nothing high-rise, but one building. Am I right, Paris?
You're absolutely right. Matter of fact, I have all the pictures of the street where Record Row existed.
Right. And all the buildings were more the smaller buildings, Now today, you go down that same street, oh my God, you don't even know it. High rises all down the street. Nothing's on the low side. Yeah.
Gus, how many labels labels do you know of that were there? I know I remember BJ, Chess, Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if Constellation was down there.
Yeah, Constellation
and
was there. Jerry Butler's company was out there. Then Gene Chandler, after he left Brunswick, he had a label when he had Backfield Emotion. He was there, So it was always a lot of different companies. Later, Willie Henderson had a place on Michigan, him and Robert Terrell, but that was later. But that was on Record Road, 1827 South Michigan. So we have, my organization is called the Record Road Foundation, which Greg Parker is the founder, him and his wife Stephanie, and in 1991, Greg had an idea about the history and let's keep it, and he began to get everything from everybody, from Jimmy Reed's guitar and the door from his house, and so we have so much stuff. And Greg Parker and Paris, both of them are part of Record Roll, and this is a great organization that we kind of put together to reserve our history, and we have it all because people like the Chicago Defender and the Pittsburgh Courier gave us that info that we could have and turn it over so we could keep this and make sure that the history's told right. So that's what we're doing with Real School Remix Show with Reggie, is to give it to you straight, let you know from, where it is, because today there's new ways that have been established for the new players today. How we learned it from the old players, like my Carl Davis and, like I said, and Howard Bedno and guys that I had the privilege, especially Calvin Carter from VJ. Calvin was the one that was the ear behind the success of VJ. He brought Duke Earl, Gene Chandler into the label, and the Beatles and all these groups. He was producing everything. Jimmy Reed. So he had an ear, and that was my first guy that gave me my first record to take to the station. That's why I know if you got a strong record like I had, I would always be successful, because I knew then I had to have a hit record, because I learned that from these guys. They say, like, here's a hit. Take this over radio station and let me see what you could do with this. Shit, I came back, man, them boys had a smash record, you understand? And that was my first record I ever took to a radio station in my life. Yeah.
So, Gus, and speaking of VJ, and I think one of the hottest jazz records that ever came off of VJ, did you have anything to do with Eddie Harris's and Exodus?
No, but that was one of my favorite songs, and the reason you like that, because we used to bop on that.
Right.
So we used to go to Peps and Persian, and so all them places like that, that's where we broke our records at, with Peps, the Persian, the Trianon. And, even after the Club Delisa closed, it became the Club. And then Carl Davis, we had a spot, we had our own club, you remember, on 87th and off of Ashland, called the Carl Davis Palace, And then Gene Chandler had a club on 69th Street called Gene Chandler's, So
wow.
we always was in the entertainment in Chicago to be. Remember when Perb's House was called Perb's House? That was the first disco that was on the south side, and then you had Faces and all the places that was up north, that was quite popular places,
And the radio DJs got into that too as well. The Burning Spear and
that was Evadne Jones and Purvis Fans
right.
Club. Yeah, that was the Club Delisa. That's the Burning Spear.
The Burning
Club.
Spear wow. Okay. It went from 55th to 79th Street on Stony.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, that's something that I didn't know, and I'm truly excited about that.
Oh, no,
so that's
the Burning Spear was always on 55th Estate, the same place that Club Delisa was. They just took it and took Club Delisa away and called it the Burning Spear. That's what Purvis Spann and Rodney owned that. Now that's right across the street still from the barbershop that sold all the tickets. You remember where all the tickets were sold at the cleanest barbershop, Redmond's Barbershop, across the street from the club.
Okay.
So that's the barbershop building is still there, but the club is towed down. The club got towed down. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's a Kentucky Fried Chicken or something on the corner. I remember seeing the club.
Exactly. It was there. They tore it down real nice. But the stage used to come up and down. When the show started, the stage would go up. So you automatically elevate the artist up higher, like a stage. You know what I'm saying? That's where Vivian Carter worked in the club before she started VJ Records, she worked in the club as a barmaid in the club, as a waitress in the club. Barbara Ackland worked in the club, too.
And she eventually went down to Brunswick with Love Makes a Woman. Wow. Oh,
yeah, she was our receptionist. And Jackie Wilson heard her singing and told Carl to record her.
Wow.
That's how that happened.
That's almost like parallel to like what Martha Reeves did in Detroit, right? With doing Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. She was like the receptionist for Motown. Oh wow! And Barbara Ackland was a receptionist down for Brunt. Oh wow, that is.
Yeah, she had wrote a song. Carl was producer Jackie, and one of the songs that Jackie was doing, Barbara wrote the song. Her and Gene Record, because don't forget, her and Gene Record was songwriters together. So, Have You Seen Her and all that? She's on all them songs with Gene. So that's the way it was with publishing and writing. Right, that's what they were doing there. So they were a great songwriter team, you know. So Barbara Ackland songs, and I'm the Same Girl, and all the stuff she had. And Barbara was always singing background for a lot of the stuff for Carl, the different artists we had. Don't forget the artistics we had too.
Oh yeah, Marvin Smith.
Right.
Those guys, yeah.
Vibrations and the Vibrations.
Cindy, now you know I love that. Don't even get me started on that, man.
Yeah.
Since I fell for you, don't get me started on that. You know, you'll bring out the Dusty lover in me. Perry.
Yeah, well, Carl, you know, Carl did all of that. That was all Carl stuff.
Wow.
Shake a Tail Feather, all that stuff.
5 Dutone. Paris, you got to tell me about this upcoming project. You got to tell me about this film, and you got to tell me about, you know, your feelings behind it, and what is really the inspiration that moved you towards creating this. I know you want to preserve the history, but what else?
Well, actually, it was Gus's brainchild.
Okay.
And Gus said, "Hey, we're going to have the score for that film." And I said, "Well, that's not a problem."
Well, it wasn't my brainchild. It was the family, the Chicago Music Group, which is the family that Carl left a will for us to do this, Reggie, in behalf of me and Mary Ann and his family to get this done. So then that's when Paris came in, and Paris wrote this song. Paris, you can go ahead and take it from there.
Okay. Well, I was under the impression. Well, you brought it to me, so that's why I thought you were handling all of this. So, but anyway, regardless of who it was still all within the family, and it needs to happen. People need to know who Carl Davis was, and for him, like I said, he was remarkable because he wasn't a musician, but yet he knew where every note was supposed to go, okay? And there's a lot of other things that people need to know, and especially when he helped just artists who really were falling on hard times. He took his own personal money and lifted them back up. See, people don't know this. People don't know this. He was a hero to the musicians, to the artists, you know. And he helped Jackie Wilson a lot. He helped a lot of people. Walter Jackson, you know. So he had a lot on his plate, you know. But the book, everybody should get the book and read the book.
Right, the man behind the music. Those two stories I heard. And I was really, that really warmed my heart, especially about Walter, because I remember as a little guy, as a kid, running down to the Regal on 47th Street and just seeing Walter blow on those crutches. That just like blew my mind. He was just standing up there blowing. Oh man!
Right.
And people would.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Perry.
No, when Walter came into my studio. and I saw that he was on crutches. The first notes out of his mouth, I sat there and I couldn't move. I could not believe that his voice was coming from this man.
Yes.
It just totally amazed me. And Gus, Merge.
Yeah.
Merge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Merge is Randy and them, Reggie, who own the skate rink.
Okay.
Red City Skate Rink.
Okay.
Now, they were the group Merge that I found from one of my friends called me from one of the groups to do K's and said, man, we got some little kids that's really good, man. They was like 16, 15 years old, Deborah and Randy. So I took them over to Paris Studio. That's when me and Paris had started working together. This was in the 70s. And took them to Paris. Of course, they're playing on Paris record. I Choose You, the record you like, Reggie.
Right.
That's Merge them playing on that. That's them playing the music.
Wow.
And so they became, right away, Paris fell in love with them. He wanted them for everything. Because, but Paris was the first one did my first demos for me to introduce them to Carl and to a label that was out of New York that signed them. And we had a little success with them. That's where me and Paris' first project was, when he did the first song for me, with them. And that was when WL. Now, WL is also involved with this deeply. Then you could tell them a little thing about WL because he's kind of like a legend in his rights. He's one of the first three that had the TV shows that stood for Chicago, and that was Stars of Tomorrow and what's the guy's name, Big Bill Hill, and the Don Kinnear show, Soul Train. That was all this was on Channel 26. That was our local television station that was breaking our music out very big on them three television stations. Now, that was from the 60s and 70s, right? Right, Perry?
Oh, yeah.
I know
so
about
that all came up with Record Road too. All that was happening all around the city. WL was over on Madison, but it was still in support to what was happening off of Michigan Avenue.
And WL came to me. WL came to me and said, "Hey, Paris, how would you like to have a studio?" And I said, "Come on, stop playing." He said, "I'll tell you what. Give me 2 weeks. I'll build you a studio on the top floor of this building." And 2 weeks passed. He said, "Come here. Come upstairs." He opened up that door, and there was a studio there.
Wow.
A nice one too, Reggie. In where WL's place was, he had a real nice suite. He had a penthouse suite. And then he had Paris upstairs in another penthouse studio. A really nice place. Now, you got to realize, Reggie, this is when we down at Playboy Club dealing with Walter Jackson down at the big ballroom at the hotel that Playboy had. Walter was in that ballroom with the company there. We had a big press party, all that kind of stuff. And things was really rolling, both sides of town. Now, this time, Wiegand went from South of Michigan over to North of Michigan because Hugh Hefner's spot was on North Michigan. And then that's when we found out our music had crossed over, And
then I mentioned WL's name at the Playboy Club, and within about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, I had 2 cards, membership cards.
Yeah, just because he said he was part of WL.
Yeah.
Gentlemen.
Yes.
Time flies when you're having fun. So we've been rolling and speaking on this history for about 7 minutes now. Now are we going to go on, or what are we going to do? Are we finished? What's happening?
Well,
I guess we could go ahead and finish up. I think we got everything told, and that this is the first part of many more shows that's coming. Our next show is coming on December 7th, and the continuous with Don Burnside and Emmett Gardner, which is another friend of ours from the promotion marketing that represented Curtis Mayfield. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a lot out of Chicago here that we have to tell you about. And that's what we call ourselves doing with this Real School Remix radio show that we started a couple of years ago, and now this is our second season, actually. So we hope to bring you a lot of more information, and next time we'll have the lines open where you can call in and we can say something to you in respect to the music. Hopefully everybody's listening to the show. Thank you.
Paris?
Yes.
Paris? You come on and you've got about a good 30 seconds to give up a good wrap up. You go ahead on and tell us what your experience has been.
I just really wish we could have covered from more of VJ to Brunswick. Of course, we couldn't get it all in, but one day soon, I just hope there's another show on this so we can reveal a lot of other things about Brunswick Records and Carl Davis.
Right.
Absolutely. And this is, for me, this has been a foundation show, and I've learned a lot, and so I'm going back and do more of my history, and so that I can be better a facilitator to help share this rich information with the world. Guys, thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
And thank you.
Hey, Beverly, can you come in?
And this has been Real School Remix, an hour program on the history of Chicago music, and of course, much more will be coming your way about the information on the record industry, how music is produced, and all those great things that you will need to know, especially sharing the stories who've been directly in it. Thank you so much for the Real School Remix Show and Gumbo for the Soul on blogtalkradio.com.
And yes, Gus Redmond, Beverly can come in. It has been an honor, privilege, and a pleasure for Tribe Family Channel and Genius is Common to sponsor Real School Remix Talk Radio, Chicago Record Row, where it all started. So be sure to tune in December 7th, 2017, same Tribe Family Channel, same Genius is Common